last time, obviously, we took questions from the audience, but we got really deep really fast, so we didn't wade in to the tool. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time just orienting folks that might be newcomers to On Trajectory, and just talking about its basic layout, features, and functions. I'm not going to go into any depth whatsoever. I'm just going to point things out. So On Trajectory, it's got three main areas. It's got the big, beautiful chart up here, which you can resize to your liking, that reacts in real time and will show you whenever you make any minor change to your plan, you're going to see the result. You're going to see the result immediately. You're going to see the new ending balance get calculated, which is shown actually two places, here and also here. And you will understand how small changes to your plan can have large impacts over time. The other data that's shown here on the right side, we've got we show both the trajectory end balance and the progress end balance. Progress is simply, what have you achieved in reality? You can capture your progress in a couple of different ways. You can either link your accounts and pull your balances, or you can, I lost that. Or you can manually update your progress either in aggregate or on an account by account basis. So if you want to do it, so if for example, you're using another tool like Mint or something that you've already linked your accounts and you don't want to link them in On Trajectory, you can update your progress here, and we'll distribute it based on the ratio of starting balances. Or you can do it on an account by account basis by simply clicking in here and putting the progress you've achieved on each account. Question in the chat, does linking pull in balances or assets? At this time, it only pulls in balances. We do have plans to pull in your asset classes so that we can do better Monte Carlo analysis later on. For newbies, that probably didn't make any sense, but for other folks, it probably did. Okay, so so the chart on the top, a little bit of data over here on the right, trajectory and progress and chance of success. Chance of success is a kind of analysis to show what are the chances that your assumptions will meet reality. Obviously, this is based on a mathematical analysis and is not a guarantee, but it's a way to give you confidence that your assumptions are valid. On the bottom, three tabs: income, expenses, and accounts. This is where you're going to put in your current and anticipated income streams for you, for your spouse if you have one, or someone else in your household. Expenses, again, there's a couple different ways to enter expenses, either as single line items, which we recommend for things like mortgages, car payments, daycare, big chunky items that have distinct beginnings and endings. Otherwise, we recommend using something, what we call an expense group. And this is kind of like a budget where you have various different items that you can group together. These are things that you're not going to get away from. You're not getting away from dining out or cell phones or TV, cable, internet. So you can group those together. Now, you can have different ranges for your grouped expenses, just like you can have ranges for anything in On Trajectory with a particular start age and an end age. And we use either numbers or the variable R. The variable R represents your retirement age. So if you use the variable R in your data, and let's say, for example, you have 67 for retirement, and so you're putting your expenses and your income anticipations, and maybe you've set up different ranges in your account structures based on R, then you just change R one place, go from 67 to 65 or 62 or 42, whatever you're lucky enough to achieve, and you can see all of that on the chart at one time without having to change those individual items. So that's just a quick, very quick overview of how On Trajectory is structured. This week, I wanted to tell a story, and I wanted to show a feature. Um, I'll tell the story first because of recent events. Obviously, the situation in Ukraine has really impacted. Um, we already had high inflation. Inflation is now tracking higher as a result. Oil prices have caused gas prices to go up. And I just want to actually, before I go too far into this story, I want to give a quick nod to we have 3 folks in Ukraine who help program On Trajectory, and they're still working. They've left Kyiv. They're outside the city in different locations, and even with what's going on, they're still working hard for us. Obviously, we're not telling them they have to, but they're telling me that it's a useful distraction to have something to work on. So solidarity to those folks. In any case, I wanted to just tell a quick story about last week. My wife, I was sitting here in my desk. My wife came in and said, "Hey, with everything that's going on, how are our investments doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm sure we've taken a hit." And she's like, "Well, how much have we taken a hit?" And I was like, "I don't know. I haven't checked." She's like, "You haven't checked? Why haven't you checked?" I said, "Because I know it's not going to be good news and there's not a whole lot I can do about it." She said, "Well, I want to see." So she sits beside me. We open up On Trajectory. Of course, all my accounts are linked. I hit refresh and boom, big decrease in our current situation. And I thought she was going to, give me a hard time, not give me a hard time, but have a more emotional reaction. And she looked at the chart and she said, "Oh, we're okay. That's fine." She got up and she left my office. That moment, I realized, wow, On Trajectory is good in good times, but it can also be good in bad times because it can help buffer short-term situations. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share with you guys my actual chart On Trajectory that my wife saw, and I'm just going to walk you quickly through. Where's F11? I'm going to quickly walk you through why she felt okay about the situation. So this is literally my account On Trajectory. You're probably asking, well, how can you have data back to 2006? And that's because I'm a nerd and I have spreadsheets of my assets back to 2006 and how they've done. And you can see the chart that my wife saw and why her reaction was, "Oh, well, it's okay." So you can see the big dip. But let me just quickly walk you through, why I feel that this is a real gateway into peace. I started tracking my assets back in 2006. You can see in 2008 took a huge hit. My assets basically halved themselves back in 2008 during the Great Recession. We had just bought a new house and it had halved in value, which was a large part of, anyway, it took me a while to get back. Now, I know for folks that are nearing retirement, either retirement or making some big decision in the near future where you need to depend on your assets, now is very scary because the risk, sequence risk, which is the order in which returns on your investments occur. If you take a big hit at the beginning, it can take a long time to recover. Now, that's true of me. So I know that I'm sensitive to the fact that what I'm about to say might not be comforting for those folks. So, but I'm over time it should get better. But it did take me from 2008 until 2018, 10 years to get back onto track. Now, obviously, my assets increased over that period, but to get on the track that I thought I should be or wanted to be on. And you can see in the past few years, I far exceeded those expectations. And the recent downturn in the market, my wife looked at it and goes, "Oh, we're fine." Even though in real terms, in real dollars, it's kind of, they're scary numbers. But she felt fine. And in knowing that she felt fine, I even felt extra. I mean, I was fine before, but now I felt really good. You can see along the way, what happened. 2008 happened, increased slowly. 2015 was not a good year for anyone. I think the market was down or it was flat. Look at COVID. When COVID hit, I'd finally climbed back above, pretty okay above my assumptions, and then immediately the markets went down 33%, I think, in a week, and then it's been good news. So for folks that are upset about the current situation, obviously I'm not discounting anyone's emotions, but we were due for a market correction, which we had, but then B, the inflation and the situation in Ukraine exacerbated that correction. Anyway, that was my personal share from my life, and I hope it's meaningful, or it can be meaningful for other folks. Before we get started with everyone's questions, okay, we're 14 minutes in. Really quick, the feature of On Trajectory that I wanted to Andrew, did you want to comment on that story in any way?
Oh, well, I always am happy to comment, but I would say, importantly, a couple of, even just in the chat, right? That idea of a gateway to peace, that idea that On Trajectory allows you to take a look at where you're headed, and frankly, one of the things that I think you do really well and would be a great part of this conversation at large is why that illustrates why it's valuable to track your expenses over time. Like why it's value, not just your expenses, but your accounts and everything. Because when you do that, you actually have this ability to see how things are moving in real time and compare your assumptions and your intentions and your hopes. So I think that's really good. But a lot of good feedback, even in the chat, of just, everybody feels some stress around finances, and the news likes to add in some of that emotional stress on top of that. And so it's really nice to have a place you can go and feel a sense of peace when you're able to look at this. So.
Yep. I don't know if for the folks that joined early, they heard me say this, but Andrew and I were talking about this right at the beginning. I always say that On Trajectory only does three things. One, it helps you make a long-term model of your financial future. Two, it lets you track your progress against that model. That's 1 and 2. And it does a third thing, which you actually don't have to do. You get for free if you do 1 and 2. If you make a model and you track your progress, then you get the peace of mind for free. That's number 3. So it does 3 things: make a model, track your progress, achieve peace of mind. Okay, so the feature that I wanted to show this week is it's going to be a quick one. This won't take much time, and it's really easy to use. So a lot of times folks ask me, okay, I love how I got all these dials and switches and things that I can turn and practice with, but what if I don't want to do that? What if I want the tool to tell me what can I spend, where can I spend it, how can I spend it, so that I'm okay? And we probably need to do better at advertising some of these features and functions we have, but we have something called auto adjust. We need to challenge to the community, please come up with a better name than auto adjust expenses, because we need something flashier and more fun than that. But the way auto adjust expenses works is you pick a chance of success, and we only let you choose 80, 90, or 95. Why? Because I'm not comfortable giving people the chance to target less than 80% chance of success, because that's the absolute minimum that I feel comfortable letting anyone target for. Because that means
explain. I was going to say, explain a little bit about why that's true.
Right, you're right. So an 80% chance of success. So chance of success is, what are the odds that I'm going to actually have money based on this model? And if you target a 50% chance of success, that means in a room full of 10 people, half the people are running out of money. At 80%, in a room full of 10 people, they've got their plan, they did everything right, they made their model. 2 of them are still running out of money before they wanted to run out of money. In a room of 10 people, that's That's 80%. That's a lot of people, 2 out of 10. So I personally shoot for 95% or above. I would recommend everyone shoot for 95% chance of success above. Now, let me really quickly, and if we want to talk more about how that success percent is calculated, put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to briefly say this is based on, by default, a Monte Carlo and a historical analysis, which is taking the past and randomizing it and applying it to the future over and over and over again, and seeing if not just taking one path, many paths, and seeing how many of those paths still have money at the end. Okay, so auto adjust. So let's just leave it at 95%. But now here's the cool thing. You get to pick how much do you want to have at the end of the line. Some people, they want to go out, just use it all up. Some people want to have a little cushion. Some people want to have a little bit of a state at the end to pass along. So you get to choose that. I'm going to just say, so this model right here is currently projected to have $300,000 at the end of the line. Let's say I'm going to shave that off in half, say 150,000, but I want to have a 95% chance of success. So what this is going to do is a couple of different things. One, it's going to adjust from the current date. So if you've been using On Trajectory for a while and you're 5 years in, it's not going to go back to the beginning. It's going to start at the current date, and it's going to adjust your expenses to target that end balance. But then it's going to run an analysis and check the chance of success. If the chance of success is not within the correct range, it's going to adjust your growth assumptions. So there's multiple things that are going to be adjusted here. Now, in this will probably run quickly, but in real life, when you're running this, it can make a couple of different changes, and it will tell you what it's going to change, and you can have a chance to accept it. So this is simulating different expenses, adding expenses. Now it's running the Monte Carlo analysis and historical analysis to make sure that we're within. It didn't. Oh, okay. So in this particular case, it's adding more expenses. And you can see it. You can see everything happening. We've got a live feed here on the right side showing exactly what's being attempted, why it's being attempted. In this case, we're actually increasing the growth assumptions, changing the expense structure. Okay, so here's what we got. To achieve a trajectory end balance of 150,000 with a chance of success 95% minimum, you can potentially increase future expenses by $345 per month, and you can potentially increase your growth expectations by 0.6%. Do you want to keep these suggestions or not? So if I say keep them, this is confirming what we did. And so what we did here, we added an expense adjustment. We put in an additional 345. Now, of course, you can put this, if you want to put this someplace else, you can put it wherever you want, but here's the expense adjustment. And we adjusted the future growth expectations by that amount to achieve, in this case, a 99% chance of success. Really cool feature. As I said, we probably need to call it out, market it a little bit better, but it's there, and hopefully folks will take advantage of it.
So Tyson, so just to kind of wrap a few things in there, that was one of the key questions about understanding auto adjust expenses. So I think that hopefully helps. We did get a few questions just related to that. Specifically, the two things that happened after you ran that simulation was, one, it did officially change your expenses and adjusted your growth rate when you kept it. Correct? It wasn't an or, it was an and.
Yes. When I chose accept, it made those changes. If I had said decline, it would have backed it. So you would have the data. You would know what you can do without actually making the changes. So I think before, this growth was 4.5%, and this was 2.5%. So this increased by pre-retirement, it increased by 0.8, and post-retirement, this increased by 0.5. which gave the average, I think it was 0.6. I see in the chat, why did the auto adjust increase the growth rate? So the reason that it increased the growth rate was when we ran the analysis, it came back 100%. So whenever it comes, so we added the expenses, and then the analysis came back at 100%. When it's 100%, we're like, okay, maybe this person has really, really, really low growth expectation. Like maybe they put 2%, or maybe they put, so what we want to do is we actually want to increase the growth expectations to be something that's more in line with what one could actually expect. And then we adjust the expenses again. And then, so if we increase the growth expectations, that's going to change the end number. So then we increase the expenses again, and then we ran the analysis again. If it comes back at 100% again, we're gonna again make a small adjustment upward in the growth expectations, because I think it uses like a percent. I can't remember. I should know, but it uses small increments for the growth expectations, and it's based on a percentage, not a flat rate, which is why the pre-retirement and post-retirement increase was different. And then it reruns the analysis again. And so what this does is it helps people not only change their expense structure, but it helps them also dial in what they could reasonably expect for market returns. It's only going to try that 3 times. So if it returns 100% twice, 3 times, after that, it's going to stop. It's going to, okay, you know what? I'm done messing with your growth assumptions. I'm just going to give you the feedback. And we do that because we don't want someone to have to sit and wait forever for this thing to run. But we also don't want to, we just want to be careful about increasing growth assumptions because maybe that's not what they want to do. So in this case, it did, you can see that it did go down to 99%. So I think this is kind of like a really good use. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, it's a great tool, I think, for anybody who's, trying to figure out, how am I going to manage, currently or into retirement? What can I spend? What are my expenses? What are my options there?
Yeah.
And what happens? Let me just jump on the back end of that real quick and ask this question from Elko. What happens if the progress end balance then shows negative, although the chance of success is still 100%? That's what confuses.
That is a great, you know what? I've never gotten that question. And in fact, I hadn't really pondered that, because that's a really good, so if you're not there, right, you made some assumptions, but your progress does not. So in this case, the progress is below what the trajectory end balance is. Currently, and maybe Andrew might take a note on this one, currently we don't take progress into account when we're looking at this function, but we probably should, because what it means is the individual is not achieving what the trajectory is anticipating, which means how can we give them the confidence if we already know they're not achieving it based on progress. Now the tricky thing is, and why I'm not totally convinced we should, is because progress is based on market volatility. So maybe the reason the progress is not achieving it is because we're in a bear market, or there's been a recent correction, or the Russians have invaded Ukraine. Maybe that's why. Which, if that's the case, then we probably need to buffer that expectation, because the progress is going to, just like I showed you on my personal chart, real progress is all over the place. I mean, it is extremely choppy. So, changing our results based on this choppiness, I'm always wary to do that. But of course, that is something to consider. Andrew, I'm only just glancing at the chat log, so I'm going to leave it up to you. That's the next question.
No, I'm pulling those in. Well, I'm just going to follow that one, but you're still paying into your retirement accounts versus pulling out, is what I'm assuming this is the question here. related to
If you're
exactly
pre-retirement, if you're pre-retirement,
right. But post-retirement, in this case, well, now you're balancing. Hey, well, what are the options if I have a potentially negative trajectory?
Yeah,
or I go into the negative territory. How do I manage
that's
adjustments on that?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for suggestions. We're always trying to make this tool the absolute best it can be to help people. So, we're gonna consider that, especially if they are in a drawdown period or a withdrawal period. Okay, you have a next question for me? Oh, so now everyone use the Q&A or the chat. We prefer the chat to be like just commentary. Put your real questions in the Q&A if you can. That would be great for us.
Yeah, that is true because we're prioritizing the Q&A questions.
Right, exactly. So
the chat is good to help clarify.
The chat log. Right.
Yeah, good for clarification though. So there is some good feedback in the chat from folks who've used the tool. You can kind of look through there so that you can actually revisit some of the growth expenses. The idea of Ray mentioned considering a threshold value. So I think this is good stuff as we're going down this road. Let me ask you, just as we're in the process, can we maybe make a quick pivot into setting up or dealing with a 401k rollover into a traditional IRA? So because this may even allow us to kind of play out some of the questions that we're even asking here. Like, let's take a look at how we can take one account that we've got, roll it over into the question is demonstrating how to use OT to do a 401k rollover to a traditional IRA and assume the traditional IRA is initially set to 0. And I think that allows us to look at a couple of things, both kind of some tax implications, some future drawdown implications, and it allows, I think, we can kind of follow back around on some of the question around auto adjusting expenses, but looking at it with an account that's in play.
Yep, will do. That was a lot of questions in one, but I'll do my best.
Sorry. Well, what I was really asking is answer the question, the OT 401k rollover to traditional, and just keep in mind the conversation that we've had related to how we would actually use an account like that, look at that related to expenses and success rates, et cetera.
So it's interesting that the rollover from a 401k to an IRA is a relatively new feature that we've added, actually, I think, in the past year. And the entire reason that we added this feature was because I left a job that had a 401k and I wanted to roll over into an IRA, and I went into OT to model it, and I was like, oh, you know what? We don't actually have that feature. So we added it about a year ago because I needed it personally, but now we do have it. So anyway, how do you do it? So what I'll do in this profile, I'm going to make this profile a little bit older because this one started on January 1st, 2022. Let's set it back to 2015. All right, so now I've got an older account, and it's got some progress that's occurred. Not good progress, but we can leave that for now. And let's say, so now it's 2022, and I just left this job, and I want to roll over this 401k into an IRA. So couple of prerequisites. You have to have defined to the system a target for the rollover to occur to, and it has to begin either before the year that you want to roll it over or on the year that you want to roll it over. So in this case, we're rolling over at age 30. So let me set this 401k back to, so it was 28 when he started, or she started it, and now we're 35. So there's the IRA. So you don't have to roll over to an IRA, but if you do roll it over to an IRA, you can do it tax-free. If you roll it over to if you try to roll it over to an account, that's not a traditional IRA or some other traditional retirement plan, then there are tax implications. So let's demo that real quick. So I've got a 401k. I've had it since I was 28. I'm now 35 and want to roll it over. You simply click on the 401k, choose roll over on end age. So that means we're going to roll it over on the end age of the account. So we're ending this account at age 35. We have to have a target account that begins either at age 35 or earlier. And so if we look, I clicked off of it. If we look here, roll over on end age, select an account, and you can see we can either do default investments or IRA. We're going to roll it over to the IRA, and because this is an IRA, it's tax exempt. And that's it. We're done. It's going to roll over at age 30. Oh, I got to choose an income. It's going to roll over at age 35 into that other account. Now that's different. I mean, I just want to say it out loud, than a Roth conversion, right? In a Roth conversion, you're converting it. You're going to pay taxes on the gains, and I'm sorry, you're going to pay taxes on everything, and then it's going to go into a Roth account. We actually make it easier to do a Roth conversion than we make it to do a rollover. We're working on making the rollover just as easy, but in a conversion situation, instead of choosing rollover on end age, you can choose convert to Roth. And when you choose convert to Roth, there's some other options you have, but you also have the ability to automatically create the Roth account, which that's missing from the rollover. So the rollover account has to exist, and then you do the rollover. And in a Roth conversion, you can automatically create the Roth account. Andrew, back to you.
Nice. Okay, that's good. So let's take this scenario and let's we have one question about comparing scenarios. Okay. So I think especially for those who are new to On Trajectory, like, as we kind of dive into the nuances of, auto adjusting expenses and rolling over, there is an opportunity for us to look here about how do you compare a scenario? Like, if say in your case, you're like, I was thinking about leaving this job, but I actually want to know what it's going to look like if I do leave this job and I'm going to jump into this other opportunity. How do I compare my scenarios?
Yeah, so we have had a scenario compare for quite a while, but it's the way we implemented it was two different windows. So you would create your baseline scenario, you would copy it, and make a copy. Let's just do that. So we got March workshop, copy scenario is March workshop copy, and then if you wanted to do the compare, we would launch two windows. You'd have one March workshop and then in another window, March workshop copy, which is okay, but people didn't love it. And we were consistently being asked, I want to see both scenarios on the screen at the same time. And I was, from a technical standpoint, it's a little bit tricky because you're loading a lot of data into memory. And then the other ask was, and I want to be able to edit one or the other of these scenarios in the same window. And I thought, and I never really gave it a lot. So this ask has been on our enhancement list for a long time. And I never really gave it that much thought because I was like, oh my God, that's gonna be so complicated how you can edit two different scenarios in one UI, showing both of them, keeping them separated in memory. And I got asked again about it about 2 or 3 months ago, and I for some reason I just was like, I'm gonna put this thing to bed. I'm gonna figure out why I can't do it so that I can just stop pretending that I can do it. And I started looking at the code. I started looking at the way the architecture of the product is. I started looking at different techniques, and I realized we can do this. We could actually do everything. We can show both scenarios in the same UI and let the user choose which one they want to edit. And I sat, my wife was yelling at me. She's like, are you going to come out of here like all weekend? I don't think I changed my clothes, never showered. I sat in my office about 2 or 3 months ago, coded all weekend. And I didn't drag in any of our regular programmers because I didn't want to distract them. And I just did this. So we now have that ability. So I made a copy, right? March workshop copy. Let me increase the expenses in retirement for this one and get this person on a different trajectory. All right, so this person now, that's negative. I'll just decrease a little bit. So this person is now got 2 scenarios, one where they have a surplus of a couple of $100,000 and one where they're basically walking out the door with nothing. And now let's compare these and be able to toggle between them. So we've long had this ability compare scenario, and you can choose the scenario you want to compare to, but notice there's a new checkbox. Now, the reason we have not sent out any community email on this feature is because we're not done. We want to make the UI implementation, the user experience on this even better than this. So this was the quick and dirty thing that I did over the weekend a couple of months ago, where you have this checkbox display in the same window, and then you can choose the scenario you want to compare to. But what we're going to ultimately have is a list of all your scenarios, and you can just check off the ones that you want to put into the comparison and display. So here we go. So now let me hide the progress because it'll make it cleaner to see here. All right, progress is hidden. So I got 2 scenarios shown. I've got my average growth line, my trajectory, my orange line, which is the one with me walking out the door with $12,000. And now here's displaying the other one here. And I can, so the one that's highlighted, the one that's filled in, let me turn off the chart tooltip. The one that's filled in is the one that you can edit. So you can make changes. You know, oh, I want to have a little bit more buffer, you know, before I go out the door, change my retirement expenses here. Okay. But if I want to change the other one, I just click on it. Now it's going to become the highlighted one, and the other one's going to become the dotted one. And I can make changes to that as well. And you're not limited to 2. You could have 3, 4, 5 different scenarios, or scenarios, all up here, and you can toggle between them and make adjustments. So it's a really, really cool feature. And we will, once we finalize the implementation, I'll probably do a whole blog post and an email because nobody else in the industry is doing this.
Yeah, a lot of good feedback right there in the chat. A couple of folks strong, which is really, I mean, I think that's one of the things, you know, when we're trying to look at how do you compare, sometimes all the questions we have, really, it's like, you just need to see it on a chart, which is helpful, super helpful, right? That's why it's there. Real quick on, just to kind of touch on the traditional IRA conversion, that's the same process if you have a Roth or any other type of retirement account, correct? Like any type of your conversion, you're going through that similar process.
So yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure we dot our T's and cross our I's here. A Roth conversion is when you take a traditional retirement account, 401k, 403b, TSP, traditional IRA, and you convert it to a Roth account. Traditional accounts, money goes in pre-tax, it grows tax-free, but when you take the money out, it's taxed at your income tax rate, the entire amount. A Roth account, money goes in post-tax, grows tax-free, and as long as you take it out after 59 and a half, there's no taxes on it. So a rollover can be a lot of different things. I mean, you can roll over from a savings or a CD. I mean, the way I use the term is simply I'm taking the money from one account and putting it into a new account. So if you're rolling over from a 401k to a traditional IRA, and I might need Ray to we might need to let Ray be a co-host because I don't want to say anything wrong. He's actually a certified financial planner. Actually, if you know what, Andrew, do that. Make Ray a co-host real quick, just in case he wants to chime in.
All right, we'll get Ray on here. Hang on, let me pull him up and I'll let him.
He's probably like, Tyson, what are you doing? Put me on the spot.
Tyson, what are you doing? Put me on the spot.
There he is.
Hey, Ray. Thanks for joining.
Yep.
So when you roll over from a traditional IRA 401k, you can do that tax free. Of course, you got to click that tax exempt toggle switch. When you're doing a Roth conversion, it's a little bit different. You pay the taxes as you would if you were rolling it over, but you don't have to convert the whole amount. You're not taking one account and dumping the entire thing. You can choose the amount you want to roll over, and you can choose that amount. You can either choose it because you want to split it up over a number of years. Why, Ray? Because there's tax implications. You can push yourself into a higher tax bracket. And on Trajectory, you can let us figure that out. You can either say, I want to do it over a number of years, or I want to do it so that I don't push myself into a higher tax bracket. So only convert, I don't want to think about it, just convert whatever I can so that I don't push myself into a higher tax bracket. And you can pick the tax bracket you want to stay within. Ray, anything you want to add to that about rollovers versus conversions?
The only thing I would probably suggest, it's when you roll over an amount from a 401k, 403b into a traditional IRA, you're again simply deferring the tax liability until you pull that money out. So it's really not tax free. It's really staying in that tax deferred state. Yeah. But you're correct. When you roll it into a Roth, it's best to look at your current tax bracket so you don't bump yourself into another one. Particularly when you're about to retire and or enter Medicare, because Medicare issues, there could be penalties at play here if you push yourself too far into another tax bracket.
Right. And I'm glad you said too far, because let's make sure we're crystal clear, because there's so much, it's weird to me that there's still like people fret about getting pushed into a new tax bracket because they think all of their everything underneath is going to get taxed at higher rate. It's not. Right. It's only the amount you go into the new tax bracket that gets taxed at the higher rate. So
it's the next dollar. Yep, absolutely.
Right. So I went in by $10 or $1,000. Not a big deal. It's just that $1,000 is going to be taxed. And Bob James is adding, but IRMA is a cliff bracket system, which is I think what Ray was alluding to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's some deep end. I think that's an interesting, this is where, what's fun about these conversations is if you're relatively new to trying to model your finances, you can get introduced to some interesting and important concepts that you need to be thinking about. I think, Tyson, you brought Ray on. It's probably a good moment to mention that On Trajectory is a modeling tool that you use to model your own finances. It doesn't replace, or it is not an advice tool. So I think it's a good thing to mention. Certified financial planners and folks have a very important and helpful role to play sometimes, especially when you have complicated questions like this, but even in general. Yep. So yeah, I think Ray, thank you very much for jumping on and helping to walk through some of those complicated questions. I think let's jump into there you go. Casey was just that whole conversation. There's some questions and some chat. We'll all put that together because that's some good feature suggestions on unpacking how On Trajectory could model some of those conversions and where you pull the money out of to pay different penalties versus not pulling them from your IRA account. Let's jump to a question here around. Can we quickly demo how you update account amounts in order to track performance and progress year by year? Or are there any FAQs too we can share? But I think, we've talked about being able to see, compare scenarios. I think some of us who are newer to On Trajectory may go, hey, just walk me through exactly how I update those account amounts.
Right. No, let's do that real quick. So there's 3 different ways to update your progress. what we do is we save what we call progress point every time you update your progress. And you can there's a full history of progress that you can view, which is what creates the green line, which you saw when we were looking at my personal line. That's so the progress is the green line. So how do you update it? 3 ways. One, you can link your account. We use Plaid as our provider. So you can click on the account link, you can pick your account, and then whenever you decide to, you can pull your balance from that account. If you comfortable or you don't want to, or doesn't matter to us either way, how you update. But a second way, and this is the way I used to use the tool before we had account linking, because I used Mint as an aggregator. I have USAA, so I had all my accounts linked through them, and so you can update in total. If you update or in aggregate, what's going to do? It's going to look at these balances. So this is not the exact scientific method to update your balances, but it's an easy and convenient way. So let's say right now I should have $110,000 in my accounts. And if I say, well, I actually have 125,000 in my accounts, hit enter, it's going to split out based on these starting balances and just put the money into these accounts. Obviously not a real scientific way to update your balances, but if you're only interested in the aggregate amount and seeing where that puts you on the chart, then we're not viewing it anymore, progress. Then it's a convenient way to do it. If you want to actually be able to compare the balance that you've achieved, the balance you've achieved here in your progress versus what the daily calculated amount is, then you can do it on an account by account basis. So in this account, I should have 78,000. Let's say I actually only have 80,000. In this account, I should have 21. But let's say I contributed more than I thought or did better, I got 30. And in this one, I should have 10, and maybe I actually only do have 10. So you can update that way. So either in aggregate or account by account or linking.
And so I'm gonna take us one step back in case just folks maybe even just as you were starting out, what's the difference between balance and progress in this case? You've got starting balance, you've got balance, and you got progress. For those of us who are maybe brand new.
Yeah. Starting balance is when you defined the account to on trajectory, that's how much you had in your account. This is what we used to call calculated balance, but the header was so big, it was messing things up. So we just call it balance, or it's the calculation of how much you should have in this account based on the growth expectations, the starting balance, and the contributions. So those 3 factors here are going to dictate what this balance is calculated to be. And progress is how much do I actually have? So this actually used to be called actual progress. So the headers used to be calculated balance and actual progress, but to be honest, it still was confusing to folks, but that's what it is. You can always click on learn more. We've got a guide here, take you through what is calculated balance, what is progress, what is a lot of other stuff. So just when you pause on these headers, you'll often get these pop-ups, and these pop-ups have a learn more to take you to our guides to learn more.
Perfect. That's super helpful. And to piggyback on that question, if I wanted to enter historical progress, say from a couple of years back, how do I do that?
Yeah. So you have to do 2 things. First is you need to backdate your model. So your model starts on the day you signed up to On Trajectory. And we do that for a very specific reason. Sometimes we get asked, why don't we start on January 1st? And that's because if we started on January 1st, but we're actually in June, and you say you make $50,000 a year, and you make these contributions, and you do all these other things, then when you put the starting balance of an account in, you would actually have to put the starting balance from back on January 1st. But you don't know what that balance was on January 1st. So we start on the date that you begin on trajectory so that you can put your starting balances in without having to think about it. And then we prorate your income for the rest of the year, your expenses for the rest of the year, for that first year. So if you wanted to backdate, which is a nice feature. Go into your profile, which is just the circle up here. Click profile and choose the date that you want the model to begin. Earlier I chose January 1st, 2015, because let's say I have data back to then. So you choose the date you want it to begin, and then from a progress perspective, and I'm not going to say this is exceptionally easy to do, but it is available in the tool. You can either go to, this is taking a while. You can either go to you can click on the progress header, or you can choose tools and settings and choose progress history. And this will be all of the different progress points that you've added to the system. You can delete them, you can edit them, or you can add new progress. So this model obviously goes back to 2015. I can choose add progress. And I apologize that this is not more clear. We're actually working on this interface, but this particular date field, this update 4, is clickable. I know it doesn't look like it, but it is. We're going to fix it, I promise. You click on it, you choose the date that you want to add your progress point for. Let's say back in 2020, on January 1st, I knew what my balances were. I can put them in here: 60,000, 20,000, and whatever, 0. And I can save that progress point. So that way I can create that long-term model with all the squigglies in the past, and you can see that this for 120 was 80,000. So that's how you can backdate your progress.
Perfect. That's super helpful. All right, we are 11:55. We got a few minutes left as we're going through this. Like always, we're having a blast and we're moving through it. As I think, we'll kind of try and hit a few of these questions that we can just kind of answer real quick. And one of the things, like Tyson said, is we take all of these and we kind of come back through, look at all the detailed questions and reply with answers to those questions. I think also, Tyson, I would say, given some of our discussion around the auto adjust feature, that's probably something that we would be I think we'd be well advised to kind of put something larger scale together, like a blog post or something, because folks have both a desire to understand that and to explore it. So we'll jump in that. So quick questions. Couple ones. One, how many total scenarios can you create?
I don't think there's a limit.
Cool. So you can, how about layering them? How many can you layer at once?
I don't think there's a limit.
As many as you can visually see between.
Yeah.
Depends on how big your computer monitor is. I got you.
Right.
That's good. How about if you're linking your accounts with Plaid, does it automatically model back to the linked account history?
No.
Or no? No. So you have to go. You have to do that.
So when you do link with Plaid, you're going to see a refresh button next to the progress, very similar to this refresh button right here, but it'll be a little refresh button right here. And we won't automatically do it. So only pull when you click refresh, we'll pull the data in.
Nice. Well, how about another one? If you started using On Trajectory either when you retired or after you've retired, and you don't see the R, is that expected?
Yeah. So, right. So we use the R, as I said earlier, as a variable so that you can represent that number and just change that number centrally. But if you are post-retirement, so retirement's really not a thing. If you never use R, it'll never affect your model in any way. But I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that by default, it shows the R at the very beginning of your model, which may or may not be accurate. If you just want to turn it off and never see that thing again, just go to Tools and Settings, Advanced Settings, and under Interface Options, I don't even know where it is, uncheck Show Retirement Age Field. And it won't even be, I mean, it's not, if you're post-retirement and you never take advantage of using an R as a variable, it won't affect your model. But if you just want to turn off the visual indicator, you can do that as well.
Yeah, it's really there just to help you recognize what kind of date you may eyeball. For a lot of folks getting into the product, you're getting into it to see when can I retire or when can I achieve financial independence, and that's kind of a marker to do that.
Yeah, visual marker more than anything. Yeah, unless you use the R variable.
Perfect. So let me ask this one. I might go longer than we have, but I'll throw it out there. If I know how much I need to live off in retirement, so I don't necessarily need to follow the R date, can the system tell me, A, when I've hit the magic number, for instance, 5K a month or something, and B, tell me exactly what I can pull out the following years to follow a roadmap, even though there is some fluctuation in the market. So recognizing that you're going to have to balance out maybe the market performance with your expenses.
Yeah. So this is an enhancement that we're looking to make on the auto adjust. So right now, auto adjust begins from the right now, wherever I am in my model. And I think that this question is a really good one, because basically they're saying, okay, I know what my current income and expenses are. I know when I want to target retirement. So, and I have expense expectations. So maybe you say, on the expense tab, you say, post retirement, I put my expectations in. But what I really want to know is let the system figure out post retirement what I can spend. I think that was the question. I hope.
Well, or maybe what I'm really interested in seeing is if my retirement date was 68, but turns out my expenses show that 65 is fine because it won't change my expenses, right? Like, can it tell me when I've hit almost like a goal of 5K a month in retirement, and whenever I hit that, that's what I actually want to. That's what I want to model.
Okay, well, I can definitely say we don't have that.
Fair enough.
But that is a really interesting. That's a really interesting feature that I hope you wrote down, Andrew. And what I was going to say is
we've got notes and notes.
Yeah, is the other enhancement that we're looking to do in the near term is to have this auto adjust year. So I say I want X year, and then have this run. We are on the. I like to be punctual. I'm sorry, that's just the way I am. I want to be respectful of everyone. I'm always when people come in and do these things with us. So I am going to stop it now, but put in the chat log, put your questions in the Q&A. We will get back to them. I want to thank everyone so much for being here. Andrew, thank you. Ray, thank you, buddy. Probably just need to have him on full time next time.